Video I'm going to talk about positive contract. So this is the law of contract or contract law by William Brantley. I'm on page 421 where it says contracts. It is admitted law that generally where there is a positive contract to do a thing not in itself unlawful, the contractor must perform it or pay damages for not doing it, although in consequence of unforeseen accidents, the performance of its contract has become unexpectedly burdensome or even impossible. So what does this mean to the regular person? So the federal government was given the right to make contracts. Those contracts are things such as treaties, but also things that they need to have done on the federal lands. For example, George Washington hired an architect who was not in the military, was not a civil servant, but was paid by the federal government as a contractor or temporary employee to design some buildings and help construct the buildings on the federal lands at the seat of government. Many contractors today still work doing things on federal lands. So this would be some of the people who, for example, clean the buildings, empty the trash cans, the dumpsters, things like that. The government pays contractors to come in and do some of this work on the federal lands. Other contractors may be things that aren't necessarily done on federal lands, but the federal government hires them to do things for them. For example, building some of the weapons. Those are done at a private facility, but they're sold to the federal government. The federal government contracts to have those weapons built at a manufacturing facility, not on federal lands. So the person who's doing the contracting is supplying the federal government with weapons to which the federal government then will pay for those weapons. I worked at a weapons test squadron where many of the pilots would go up in the F-18s and they would test out the weapons that they were going to buy from the contractor to make sure that they worked and that they could use them. And if the weapon had a result that the military was looking for, then they would buy those weapons. So another way of contracting is to have some of these businesses doing work with the federal government and having them contract with their employees to have the employees also pay the federal government via Title 26, which is not a law, to help enlarge the military state or the military industrial complex. These aren't exactly constitutional contracts, which is why they have their instrumentalities do them for them. So again, we're seeing it's admitted law that generally where there is a positive contract or a contract for a person to do a thing, such as pay a portion of their income or wages or whatever you want to call it to the federal government or to an instrumentality. Okay, so it's admitted law that generally where there is a positive contract, the W-4, to do a thing, to pay money, not in itself unlawful, so not doing something illegal or unlawful, the contractor, which is you who signed the form, must perform the positive act in order to, or from it, or pay damages. So if you make the contract to pay the money and then you don't, then you have to pay damages for not coming through on your end of the bargain. Even though you're not really getting something, they say that you're getting protection and security, but that protection and security is not done through the Constitution. And are you really being protected? I would say no, you're not. Because the constitutional protections, which is the actual military, is done through the Constitution, which doesn't require the federal government to contract directly with or through the employers of people. So people in general, private people, are not responsible for paying money to the federal government. It was the states. So damages for not doing it. So if you, in the middle of the contract, choose not to pay them, then they're going to charge you. Although in consequence of unforeseen accidents, so nobody can tell the future. So if you happen to get fired, your contract ends. If you quit your job, the contract ends. The W-4 ends. You're not required to continue paying money or a portion of money based on the money you receive when you didn't receive the money. So the performance of his contract has become unexpectedly burdensome or even impossible, which is that you're no longer being paid. So this is just a small tidbit of information on contracts and positive contracts. The positive is for you to do the thing. The negative would be for not to do the thing. And in the Constitution, we see to do the thing in Article 1, Section 8, and to not do things under Article 1, Section 9. So you have positive statements, to do this, to do that, in Article 1, Section 8, and not to do things, not to do this, not to do that, in Article 1, Section 9. So if you want to know more about that. So a positive act or a positive signature or mark would be you actually doing something to bring that contract into fruition, which is usually done through your signature, as well as filling out the contract in general. And then, of course, you file your 1040 or whatever forms you file, also as a positive act, because you had to do something to bring it to life, to make it a contract.